Michael B. Jordan was turned away from the hotel because he was black. No drama, no shouting, just a low, flat voice behind the counter telling him they didn't have anything available, not for him. It was a Tuesday evening, just past 10. A slow night judging by the empty lobby and quiet hum of the fluorescent lights. He'd just gotten in from a late flight. No entourage, no assistant. Just him in a hoodie and sweats, carrying a single bag. The receptionist, a woman in her late 40s with a tight bun and practiced smile, looked up at him once, briefly, and didn't blink when he asked for a room. "We're full," she said. He glanced at the screen behind her. It clearly showed multiple rooms still available. He could read the listings plain as day. He asked again, calmly, whether she could double-check. That's when her eyes met his for the first time, and something in her gaze shifted. Not nervous, not unsure, but deliberate. "I said we're full," she repeated, this time slower. Then, without lowering her voice, she added, "We don't serve people like you here." There was a long silence. Michael stood still, blinking, as if the sentence had misfired in his brain. He wasn't in disguise. He wasn't hiding. This wasn't a role. And yet, for a moment, it felt like a scene. He leaned in slightly, not threatening, just confused, and asked her to repeat what she'd just said. She stepped back, pressed a button under the desk, and said she would call security if he didn't leave immediately. The words hit like cold water. Something in him flickered. Anger, maybe, or just disbelief. And for a moment he didn't know what to say, because there was no script for this. The lobby was still empty. No cameras, no crowds, no PR team to jump in. Just a man, tired from travel, being told, quietly but clearly, that his skin made him unworthy of a place to sleep. But something more was about to happen. You could feel it in the air, like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap. Hold on. This story is going somewhere you won't expect. Michael took a breath, not to calm himself, but to hold something back. Something bitter rising from a place he rarely let speak, and then said, steady but low, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The receptionist stiffened, clearly waiting for that moment, that tone, as if it gave her permission to escalate. "Sir, if you don't leave immediately, I'll call security." "Right now," she snapped, her hand already halfway to the phone. Michael didn't move. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. The stillness in his body was louder than anything. "You just told me I can't stay here because I'm black," he said slowly, enunciating each word like it was glass. Her lips parted slightly, not in regret but calculation. What would this cost her? What did he really have the nerve to do? "Security is on its way," she muttered, more to herself than him, as if it were a spell that would make the moment disappear. Seconds later, 2 guards in dark uniforms pushed through the side door, eyes scanning the room. One of them, a younger man, probably no older than 30, looked vaguely concerned, like he already sensed the trouble was more complicated than he'd been briefed on. The other one, broader, older, didn't bother hiding his suspicion. "What's the problem here?" he asked, tone clipped, already stepping between Michael and the desk. The receptionist folded her arms, gesturing stiffly toward Michael. "He's trespassing, refusing to leave. I told him we don't have space, and he got aggressive." Michael turned to the guards and said, "She said she won't give me a room because I'm black." "That's it. That's all I did. Walk in, ask for a room." The younger guard faltered, eyes darting between the two of them. The older one didn't hesitate. He grabbed Michael by the arm, hard, without asking another question. "You're leaving, now." It wasn't even a struggle, not really. Michael didn't resist. He didn't shout. He just stood there, rooted, as the man's grip dug into his sleeve, then slowly began walking toward the doors they'd come from. But something in the lobby changed in that moment. A silence that wasn't empty, but waited. Because just as they reached the edge of the room, a voice cut through the air. "What the hell is going on here?" It wasn't loud, but it carried. Everyone turned. A tall man in a dark suit, with silver in his hair and a leather folder under one arm, stood near the elevator bank. You could tell by the shift in posture, by how the guards immediately released their grip and stepped back, that this was someone who didn't normally speak unless things were serious. The receptionist's face drained of color. "Mr. Langston, I didn't know you were—" But he raised a hand, silencing her mid-sentence. His eyes locked on Michael first, then scanned the others. "Explain, now." The older guard cleared his throat. "There was a situation at the front desk. This guest was causing a disturbance because she told me she won't sell me a room because I'm black." Michael interrupted, not yelling, not pleading, just stating, just naming it. "And it landed differently in front of this man." Langston's jaw tightened. His eyes shifted sharply to the receptionist. "Is that true?" She opened her mouth, closed it. I was following protocol," she stammered. "He came in unannounced, no reservation, demanding service." "Is that what happened?" Langston asked Michael, and for the first time there was no power imbalance in the room. No doubt who was in charge here. "I walked in, asked for a room, saw there were plenty available. She said, quote, 'We don't serve people like you.' Then she called security." The room seemed to hold its breath. The receptionist took a half step back. The younger guard looked like he wanted to disappear. Langston didn't blink. "You can let go of him," he said quietly to the guards. They already had, but the correction was clear. Then he turned to the receptionist. "I want your badge, your keys, and I want them now." "But sir, this isn't—" "Now." She didn't argue again, just froze. Slowly, clumsily, she reached into the drawer, pulled out her staff badge, key card, and placed them on the counter. Langston looked at the guards. "Escort her to HR, then she's done. Permanently." Michael hadn't moved, still standing where they'd left him, his arm now free, but his eyes unreadable. "I'm sorry," Langston said, meeting his gaze. "That should never have happened. Ever." Michael didn't answer right away. There wasn't really a place for words, but something inside him had shifted. Not rage, not relief, just a deeper kind of silence. The kind that doesn't settle right away. "We'd be honored if you stayed tonight. No charge, anything you need," Langston added. But Michael didn't say yes. Not yet, because the story wasn't finished, not even close. You're going to want to see where this goes. Because what happens next isn't what anyone expected. Michael finally spoke again, his voice measured but razor-sharp, aimed not for effect, but for truth. "They tried to throw me out because I'm black," he said, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was something heavier, more exhausted. And that's when it hit Langston. He froze, staring, not just as the owner of the hotel, but as someone who now truly saw who stood before him. "Wait," he said, eyes narrowing. "You're—" "Yeah," Michael replied flatly, not out of pride, just tired recognition. "That's me." It wasn't said with ego, it didn't have to be. Recognition washed across Langston's face like a slap. As if he'd just realized he'd been watching a car crash he was responsible for but hadn't seen coming. "Michael B. Jordan," he repeated, and suddenly everything changed again. The guard shifted uneasily. The receptionist opened her mouth, panic creeping up her throat. I didn't know." But it was too late. Langston turned on them, voice ice-cold and hard as glass. "What the hell do you people think you're doing?" It wasn't just the fact that Michael was famous. It was the horror of realizing you just dehumanized someone in front of the world. Someone who had the voice to make it matter. The receptionist started blurting apologies, stumbling over her words, pleading ignorance, claiming misunderstanding. But her eyes gave her away. This wasn't a mistake. It was a habit. The guards, caught in the middle, stood silently, unsure whether to stay or vanish. "Don't touch him." "Don't even look at him," Langston snapped, and for a moment the silence that followed felt like judgment itself. The apologies kept coming, frantic, desperate, but Michael didn't respond. He didn't need to. There was nothing to answer. Langston didn't wait. He pointed at the receptionist. "You're done. I don't care what your record says, you're done. This is not who we are. This is not what we built." She tried to protest, voice cracking. "Please, I didn't know. I thought he was just—" But that was it, wasn't it? Just another black man in sweats, just someone who didn't belong. Langston looked at the guards, his voice lower but dead serious. "If you had 1 ounce of judgment, you'd have asked a single question. Instead, you grabbed a guest, one of the most respected actors in the country, and dragged him toward the door like he was nothing." They nodded, ashamed. There was nothing to defend, no angle left. Langston turned to Michael. I can't take back what happened, but I will make sure it never happens here again. He meant it. You could tell. It wasn't damage control, it was disgust. By the next morning, the receptionist was gone. So were the guards. HR had already begun quietly revisiting hiring practices, internal policies, implicit bias training. Words that sounded corporate, yes, but something about this hit different. Because the footage, the lobby security camera that caught it all, didn't just show a mistake.